Hey, good evening, everyone. Happy World Book Day. This is Patricia from Old School Lane, and this week we're going to be discussing about chapter one of Things I Can't Explain, a Clarissa novel written by Mitchell Kriegman. So, around a few days ago, I posted up my reading of chapter one of Things I Can't Explain, and it was received pretty decently. I did get a handful of views and some comments from people saying that they are definitely going to go pick up the book and they're going to read it for themselves. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. So that's awesome. Right now, I'm just going to share this link to everyone so that everybody can join in and discuss about their thoughts on Things I Can't Explain if they have read it, of course. Hey, Josh, thank you for the coming over. That's awesome. All right, so I'm just going to post this really quickly up on the Facebooks and the Twitters. Doing a live stream on chapter one of Things I Can't Explain. Come join. Okay. There we go. Shared it on the Twitters, and now I'm going to share it on the Facebooks. Let's see if anybody else is here. Hey, Little Delicious, welcome. Hi, I'm in the middle of the We're in Between podcast. I say thank you for everything you've done with it. Well, first of all, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate it. First of all, it wasn't just myself. It was a combination of many other people. There was obviously the other co-hosts, Casey and Ashley from the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast. They were the ones who called me in and said, "Hey, Patricia, we're thinking about watching As Told by Ginger. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love to." But yeah, I mean, it was just a collaboration between the three of us. And then, of course, there was also the other amazing guests that we've gotten on the show. I'm sure that you already have listened to some of them, Little Delicious. I don't want to spoil the rest of them if you haven't checked it out, but I was quite surprised of how well it turned out because it was funny because As Told by Ginger was like a show that pretty much nobody talked about back in the day. I've talked about this like a billion times before, and I'm sorry for those who have stayed with me since like 2011, but I'm going to repeat it again. But when I was a teenager, the show didn't really gravitate to a lot of people, especially a lot of people my age. I was 14 when the show came out. So I was practically the only one who really, really liked it. And I tried to convince everybody to say, "Hey, this show's cool." And they're like, "No, we're into Invader Zim." So, yeah, I mean, but no, seriously, it's awesome that there's a lot of people who are into the show now. So, seriously, thank you. Anyway, but we're not here for As Told by Ginger. We're here for Clarissa, more specifically, Things I Can't Explain, as it's shown on here on the screen. Anyway, so chapter one of Things I Can't Explain. We had discussed about it a few days ago. So for those who are new here, you can go listen to it. It's on the YouTube channel. But for a quick recap, so Clarissa is in her mid-20s and she is struggling with debt. She is unemployed. She's going over from job interview to job interview to see if she can be able to get herself a proper job so that she can be able to pay her bills and be able to make a life out of herself. And right now, she had just left her job interview feeling incredibly dissatisfied because she was planning on going over to this preppy school where she could possibly be a journalist over there. But unfortunately, it was cut pretty quickly. And so she decides, okay, I need a coffee break. I'm going to go over to my favorite place where I can go get some coffee. And that just so happened to be at the same building where her old job used to be. And then the chapter continues on with discussing about like all the people that she would see from time to time and kind of like micro interact with them, being like she would know them like from looking at them, but she wouldn't interact with them, as kind of similar to how New Yorkers used to be, in which like, oh, that it's a big city, the city that never sleeps. You just go off into your normal day and you just so happen to see maybe a few people that are reoccurring all the time. Her favorite person that she micro interacts with is CCG, otherwise known as Cute Coffee Guy. And so she used to go over there all the time for coffee. And now she goes there from time to time. That's the only reason why she goes back to her old place. And then the chapter ends with the cute coffee guy not. So I would like to know from anybody who has actually read through the chapter, especially those who are fans of Clarissa Explains It All, like for those who actually followed it from the very beginning. And I'll ask a question for those who have never even seen Clarissa. I actually have an interesting question to ask about this. So for people who grew up with Clarissa, now people who were kids or teenagers, when you saw Clarissa, you would think that she was a person who knew about everything. I mean, to give a bit of an example for those who are probably not familiar with it, if you are familiar with Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, it was essentially that, with the exception of it taking place all the time in school. Clarissa would be giving advice for people, discussing about various things, especially when it comes to growing up as a teenager. She would be going over things like annoying little brothers with Ferguson. She will be discussing about license, that she wants to get a driver's license, about, properly adjusting to her body, fashion, music, all that stuff. So she seemed to have known it all. I mean, that's what the show was. Clarissa Explains It All. But now with this first chapter, it seems very interesting that she is struggling. Now, this book came out around 2015. My apologies, 2015. So 2015, it was around the time in which when people were still kind of like feeling the effects of the Great Recession that happened around 2008, 2009, where people were essentially losing their jobs. People didn't have an opportunity to work. I guess sort of like the equivalent of today where everybody's pretty much unemployed, but it was because there was a huge market crash and a whole bunch of complicated things as opposed to just being as Decker, Shadow, and Creepy would say in Live and Wired, redacted. You can't say the name of the you-know-what because apparently it gets you demonetized. So, we're just having, I guess we have actually said the term. Aaron and I, we said it in Pix Mix and Dream Machine, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so Clarissa was always a character that a lot of people looked up to around the early to mid 90s. She was a character that a lot of people wished that they could be. And now that we have this book where Clarissa is struggling, she's trying to find a job, she's struggling to pay rent. And I think that, in my personal opinion, it's very relatable in a sense because Clarissa has always been like the role model for a lot of people around the 90s, but nowadays with this book going through similar struggles that people of today, they go through. I think that that's very interesting. I actually read some reviews of this book when I was first looking into it. Like looking at the Amazon reviews and the Barnes and Noble reviews and the Google Plus, Google Books, not Google Plus. No, when was the last time Google Plus was relevant? Anyway, and a lot of people were actually disappointed with it. A lot of people were saying that this wasn't the same Clarissa that they were familiar with. And I could understand that. I mean, if you're associated with a character that you've known of for decades even, like the character is like a specific way, and if they completely change into something that you are not familiar with, then it could be a chance that some people might not even get into it. I guess maybe that's how some Star Wars fans felt about certain characters. I'm not going to say anything any further than that because that's a whole can of worms there. But with this chapter discussing about how Clarissa is willing to do anything to get a job, even so much as working at a prep school, something that she's not really accustomed to, like being surrounded by a bunch of rich, popular, spoiled, and privileged teenagers, especially since she comes from a middle class family in Ohio. Her father is an architect. Her mother works at a museum and is passionate about cooking everything with tofu. And, her dad is the classic, dad example about like he would do a bunch of dumb dad jokes and all that kind of stuff. So and the fact that she came from a different decade. So she has her ground settled in. So the fact that she was willing to work at a place like that is actually pretty hilarious. And the fact that how she lost the job. She lost the job by a bunch of teenagers, more specifically, a teenager who had the scoop from her friend, who happens to be the editor of the newspaper, that she was no longer interested in dating or attracting herself to the science teacher. Now, for those who've actually listened to the Wearing Between episode, going back into Wearing Between again, so shout outs to you, Little Delicious. The Wearing Between episode, next question. If you haven't seen it yet, then I apologize, Little Delicious, but I'm not going to say what I personally feel about that episode. I'm just going to state about the concept of that episode, the plot, where essentially Ginger has a crush on a teacher, a substitute middle school teacher. So essentially when Clarissa learned about how there was a student who had a crush on her teacher, that personally makes me feel very uncomfortable, especially knowing that, you have essentially like a 13 to 14-year-old girl, or for Ginger's case, 12 to 13, falling in love with somebody who's like around their 40s. That's weird. And I remember reading this book a long time ago. I forget what the book was called, but it was almost like Stand By Me or It, in a sense. Well, not with the horror or anything like that. I'm talking about like the story structure, about like it focuses on like 3 or 4 teenagers and they're reliving their lives as adults. And one of them just so happens to have a huge crush on her teacher. And the teacher followed the crush back. And when the teacher was like trying to lure her in and, have these really, seductive moments. There was even one part of the book in which like she found the teacher and then she kidnapped him and then she like wrote her name or his wife's name in his arm so that he wouldn't forget. And then he burned in a fire at an abandoned farm or something. And then, it essentially affected the girl for the rest of her life. I really wanted to know what the name of that book is. I completely forgot about it. But the point is, and my camera's off. Oh, that's good. There we go. The point of the matter is that, these kind of things I personally do not feel comfortable with. I mean, if there's a different chance in which like the student respects the teacher, then that's a completely different instance, for example, in which Lisa had a crush on her teacher because she respected him as opposed to like falling in love with him. And that's perfect because with, her father is Homer and Homer's an idiot and she's very intelligent. So to see somebody who's really intelligent, it's, she is infatuated with him, which it's, she's not in love, she just respects him and she wants her father to be like that. Anyway, so the fact that Clarissa is, seeing that and hearing that from the students, and then she tells the other teachers this, and the main woman that she's getting the job from, they don't believe her. The reason why they don't believe her is because they think that their students are so perfect. They think that they are pure and that they can do absolutely no wrong, which is actually funny because I guess camera's off again. Okay, sorry about that. Which is kind of funny because when it comes to like preppy or privileged schools, there might be a slight chance that they would even break the rules even more. So, yeah. Anyway, so Clarissa sees that. Wait, hold on. My connection is unstable. Oh, that's just great. Okay, there we go. It's back. Yeah, this actually happened earlier. I was originally supposed to do this much earlier, but it was storming outside, and my connections were awful. But yeah, so if I start sputtering or anything like that, I completely apologize. Anyway, so the fact that Clarissa was seeing, this from her perspective and then trying to tell the teachers about it, and the teachers don't believe her, and the person that she was interviewing doesn't believe her. It's actually a really interesting commentary about how private schools like to close everything off that are not within their bubble. So yeah. Also interesting about how Clarissa would describe about the people that she would be interacting with on a weekly basis. For those who actually own the book, physically or even digitally. For those who own it audio, you can't see the pictures, so I apologize for that. But these are for the people who own it digitally or physically. So if you actually see the pictures, it's actually really cool because it's pictures that are kind of similar to how it was in the show, not without the neon colors or the font that it was in the 90s. It does kind of carry the same spirit, in which the drawings are illustrating on the examples that Clarissa is giving. With the cute coffee guy, she draws a coffee mug with a little heart and kiss symbol on it. And then there's also, excuse me, there's also a map, a detailed map of all the places that she goes to on a daily or weekly basis. It points out the places that she was going to, where the cute coffee guy works at, and it's actually really cool for those who own the physical or digital copy. And I think that it's very reminiscent of how it was back in the TV show, where people would see the illustrations and they would see, um, how Clarissa would explain things with visuals. And it works wonderfully in the book. And also another thing that works really good in the book is that she would give off her definitions, and in the book it looks like it came from a dictionary, which I'm actually curious where Mitchell Kriegman got the definitions from. I'm sure he did get it from a dictionary, like different versions of a dictionary when he was listing off like the certain definitions of the words, and I'm sure that like he probably pulled it up from multiple sources and made it look like it came from an actual dictionary, which was actually really neat. And then there's also, let me see if I can think of anything else. The illustration. I forget. There's also the celebrity references. If you remember, like Malcolm Gladwell, Lady Gaga. If you remember from the show, Clarissa Explains It All, she would always reference a celebrity. She would talk about Madonna. She would talk about Cher, Pearl Jam. They Might Be Giants. Pretty much like celebrities or bands that would be hugely popular at the time. She would always reference them, and the fact that she keeps up with her pop culture is actually pretty consistent with the character. And I think that that's really cool that they were able to nail down the character even after a decade since the TV show. Or if you want to go even a little further, since Clarissa Now, which may or may not be referenced in this book. Well, I mean, I guess for chapter 1, it is sort of referenced in this book because she was talking about the Daily Post and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get to that probably next. No, not next. This coming Sunday. Yeah, this coming Sunday, we will go a little bit more in depth about the Daily Post because that is where she is getting her coffee from. So we will go into a little bit more details about her former job. Anyway, but now I want to talk about for those who are not familiar with Clarissa Explains It All. Like if you've only known about Clarissa Explains It All from maybe like Nick Rewind or Hulu or various clips on YouTube, or maybe from an older family member or somebody that you know who is at least about 15 to 20 years older, or maybe a review on a YouTube channel or a blog or something. Now, if you're not familiar with Clarissa Explains It All, and you are now just reading through this book, I actually have a question about this. Like, removing everything that you would perceive in your small amount of knowledge. How is this book relating to you so far? Like, if you are just graduating from college, or if you are still in college right now and you are unsure about what's going on. For example, I'm sure some of you guys know, if you listen to the podcast, that a few years ago, I went back to school, and I have been taking, classes, and I have been surrounded by students who are essentially younger than me. We're talking about almost 15 years older than I am. And I, see them, and I want to know about, like, what was growing up with their decade was like, especially for those who didn't know about shows from, the 90s or even the 2000s, because they were probably like born or were like little babies when 9/11 happened. So I'm sure that they probably had an equivalent, like maybe Lizzie McGuire or maybe Hannah Montana, somewhat, not really, not Hannah Montana. I guess that's a terrible example, but I don't know. But essentially, like, somebody that you could relate to, like if you saw on TV or if you saw on a movie or something, and you're like, yeah, I can relate to this person. And then all of a sudden they grow up 10 years later and you're like, man, this person's different. So, and another thing that, that's going on is, like, the students who are especially seniors, they are very uncertain because of, well, redacted, because the schools are closed and everybody's doing their school from home. And some of them were supposed to turn on cameras. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay. Some of them were supposed to graduate this year, and now they're not, or it'll be delayed until further notice. And then the fact that there are no jobs available. I'm sure that a lot of people are pretty scared and uncertain about what the future holds for them. It's like, man, what's going to happen now? No jobs. Pretty much everything's closed. And I'm supposed to graduate from college. And, from general consensus from people in college, you're supposed to go out and find a job and make a life out of yourself. But right now you can't. And that happened with me over 12 years ago when I graduated in 2008. The moment that I graduated, I had to go to the unemployment line because there was nothing. I couldn't find work to save my life. I was underqualified because I just graduated from school, so I've never got a job where I could work, and I didn't have enough experience, and there was practically no work. I stayed more on unemployment lines than I got jobs, if you can believe it. I went through pretty much every single seminar and every single like workshop and resume, studies and all that kind of stuff. I did everything under the sun. And then finally, when I finally got work, like a few years later, like permanent work. There was times during the 2009, 2010 where I was working, but it was like part-time work where I only stayed for like a few months because, business was not doing very well. And some other reasons, but I don't want to get into it. So now it makes me think about, what about the students of today? The people who are the graduating class of 2020. What's going to happen to them? And I think that this book now, where Clarissa is going through massive struggles, she is, conflicted with the world, where she is in debt from college and she is unemployed. She has practically no money, and she is going through job interview after job interview after job interview just to look for something. I think maybe when this book came out in 2015, when people were just starting to get themselves back on their feet, I guess maybe the book wasn't like clicking anymore. Or maybe we just couldn't accept the fact that Clarissa was like struggling. But I think maybe for people who are not familiar with Clarissa, and if you're going through this right now, if you're going through that you can't go to work anymore because of what happened recent weeks or months, or even then, if you recently graduated from school and you have so much debt and you are working at a job that you don't even like, that you have to put up with so you can find something better. I'm actually curious if this chapter really has clicked with you. Like, a person who thought that she knew it all. And then when she gets to the real world, it just turned her completely upside down. So I'm actually curious from all of you guys. I'm going to probably, you know, recommend that you do read the chapter if you haven't, or, listen to me read the chapter on camera. Sorry, everybody. Okay, there we go. Listen to the chapter on my channel. And I want you to think about this. I want you to think about, how this chapter introduces, or for some people, reintroduces a character that they, connected with you in a sense in which, like, does it relate to you or it doesn't relate to you at all? Or, maybe you think that the chapter is going a little slow and you want things to pick up, which is perfectly fine. I mean, it's a pretty big, task at hand, especially compared to the other ones that I had on the poll. The poll had like very small books. This is the biggest book out of all of them. It has 37 chapters, and we only just reached chapter 1, so it's perfectly fair. Anyway, but I mean, I guess with a lot of book clubs, they would like leave off like various questions about like, something that you would like ask, or the person who's leading the book club would ask, and then you would come back with your answers next week, or you would have a discussion about it. So I'm actually going to ask some of you guys, what would you say for Clarissa as a character and her struggles? How does this relate to you as of right now? For those who are, people who graduated from school or have graduated from school for a few years, and you're still struggling with debt, and you're still trying to find yourself a good job, and for you to get yourselves back on your feet. And for those who are new to, listening into this podcast, I have, hey, Julian, how are you? I'm doing good, thank you. Hanging in there. So, yeah, I'm actually curious for those who have grown up with the book, and maybe when you read through this book, you were kind of disappointed that Clarissa didn't turn out to be the character you wanted. Do you think that now, with everything that's been going on, do you think that she's more relatable now than maybe when you read it the first time? Or if it hasn't been, then why? And I want to know about when it comes to like micro relationships. Like, what are your thoughts on micro relationships? The thoughts of people who you just see, but you have no idea what their name is. You have no idea what their lives are. You just see them. You think you know who they are based off of their actions. She was talking about a few people, like the Latina woman who has a carriage and she's always smiling, even though that the babies are constantly crying, or the grumpy bus driver, or something like that. And also she would give nicknames for, some of the people that she would see constantly, like the woman who constantly jogs and wears the chartreuse bra, or the cop who ate too many Krispy Kremes, or more specifically, who's going to be very relevant to this book, or maybe he is. I'm not going to go into far into it. The cute coffee guy. So I'm actually curious. I mean, do you have any micro relationships, and do you think that do you think that people should have micro relationships? I mean, I guess for a big city like New York City, that makes sense. But for a small town, like a small town where it only has like a few hundred people and practically everybody knows each other, would you be like the kind of person who would like see them from afar, or you just like you're really close to them but you don't really talk, and you just like maybe nod your head or maybe a wave or something, and you just see what they do and you just base off of their actions, and that's pretty much it? Because it's actually interesting that Clarissa brings up in the book about how if we were to know every single person about their lives, about their fetishes, about their dysfunctional families, it becomes incredibly overwhelming. And I guess if you have to know every single person around the world, sure. But in a situation where maybe they could help you out, like she was talking about the lady, the jogger with the chartreuse bra. She was saying, like, if I ever get mugged, I know that she would be the one helping me out. But how does she know that? I mean, she know by her actions, like she's constantly running, but would she? That actually brings up interesting points when it comes to micro relationships. Like it's kind of like with Hey Arnold, for example, how Arnold assumed that he knew everything about Ruth just by looking at her. He had this massive crush on her, and he assumed that he knew everything about her being incredibly smart and funny, and the fact that she was in the sixth grade and very good looking. But then in the Valentine's Day episode, he knew absolutely nothing about her, and they had absolutely no chemistry with each other. And so that relationship was just pretty much one and done, like around season one. I actually rhymed. One and done, season one. Anyway, but oh, hey, Chad. I'm doing good, thank you. I really do appreciate it. Hanging in there, just like everybody else is. So so micro relationships. That also is. So that's the second question. For those who are just tuning in, questions for chapter one that I want you guys to think about is, for somebody who knew about Clarissa from Clarissa Explains It All, or for those who didn't know about her, do you relate to Clarissa? Do you see yourself in her, especially with everything's going on lately? Yeah, it has been a while since I did a live stream. I know it's been too long. Anyway, the second question was about micro relationships. So yeah, those are the questions, and I'm sure that usually there's like a few other questions I'm trying to think about at the moment. Like I can't really think of them on the top of my head, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it when it comes to like the discussion of chapter one of things I can't explain. Again, for those who are tuning in, if you want to get a copy of the book, then I will leave all the links in the description below for you to pick up a copy, whether it be the physical copy, the digital copy, or the audio copy. The audio copy, who is actually being narrated by Emily Hart, who is Melissa Joan Hart's sister. Oh, hey, Jordan. Great. Great to be joining. Glad you're here. Chad says, never really saw the show. I've seen a little bit because I was more into the Nicktoons, which is perfectly fine. It's fair. If you are more into the Nicktoons than the live action stuff, it's perfectly understandable. And speaking of which, I don't want to go into massive spoilers, by the way, but you may see a reference or two of some Nicktoons in things I can't explain. So I'm not going to go any further than that. It's just like little references here and there, but they're a treat to listen to. Oh, okay, that's awesome, Jordan. You've been watching the original show on Nick Rewind. Awesome. So yeah, I'm sure that I'm actually curious for those who are just watching the show for the very first time, like. And then, going into reading the book, as I mentioned earlier in the live stream, about like how would this perception of Clarissa change now that you are familiar with the TV show, and even the pilot. For those who are not familiar with Clarissa Month that I did, like, gosh, 5 years ago. Oh my goodness. I did a pilot review of Clarissa Now, which was supposed to be the continuation of Clarissa Explains It All when she graduated from high school and she went over to college and she wanted to learn how to become a journalist. You know that story on Sabrina the Teenage Witch where Sabrina went to college so that she could become a journalism? So she can go into journalism. Ugh, I can talk. The reason why was because they never did it for things I can't explain. Clarissa Now. Clarissa Now was supposed to be the story of Clarissa going to school so that she can go be a journalist. And because that show never happened, Sabrina kind of like picked up the pieces a little bit where Sabrina went to school to become a journalist. Kind of an interesting fact. Interesting. But as I was saying about like for people who are familiar or not familiar with, that's what I meant to say, or not familiar with Clarissa Explains It All. I know that this is probably not like a great relevant question to ask, especially since we're talking about the book. I'm actually curious for those who are brand new to Clarissa, if you just watched all the episodes, like, how do you think it would relate to today's kids? I know that it's actually funny because I read an article the other day, especially for those who are quarantined. Oh, can I say that word? Am I going to get demonetized? But I don't know. Anyway, for people who are staying home, there you go. For people who are staying home, and there's a lot of TV shows and movies that are being uploaded for free for people to watch so that they can stay home. They don't have to go to a movie theater or anything like that. So there are a lot of people who have, I actually mentioned this with Aaron on Aaron and Patricia. There was a guy who watched Space Jam like 6 times a day on Netflix. And the reason why he did it was because it was like comforting to him. And it's actually interesting because a lot of people say that about like um Full House or Friends or anything like that that has nowadays become kind of controversial or has become really hokey, corny, and cheesy. Shows that haven't aged very well in this time of 2020. Um, let's but I'm actually curious about like how people are going to feel about Clarissa, because Clarissa is definitely within its time period. It definitely looks like a show that came out in the early 90s. And I think I talked about this with David live from You Scared of This. We did the Snick podcast a few years ago, and they actually mentioned the same thing, that is so it's filled with so much 90s irony that has become relevant again. So, let's see. Off topic, I was a little disappointed that you didn't do a Rocco month when Static Cling came out, but I don't blame you since it came out later than expected. Well, yeah. I mean, if I would have known the exact date and moment, I probably would have prepared for one. But yeah, it just came out of nowhere. Thanks, Netflix and Nickelodeon. And what's so bad about saying the word quarantine? I don't know, but my buddy Decker Shadow got in trouble for saying the pandemic, and his video has gotten demonetized. So I'd rather not say anything that would demonetize this video. So yeah, just want to be on the safe side. So yeah, I don't think I really have much to talk about when it comes to the book. And for the TV show, I want to save my stuff for the later chapters. So I think I'm just gonna call it a night right here, because I want to focus on getting my other stuff done. Right now, I am in the process of finishing up my last week of classes. I've been doing all my stuff online. It's overwhelming, but one more week means that I can possibly have time to finish up with some videos that I've been wanting to do for a very long time that I never got to. So, especially one that involves with a certain movie that was based off of a 90s sketch comedy show that I talked about last year that I didn't get to talk about. So, yeah, sorry. And then there's also a bunch of other things that I never got to finish. But I'm hoping that, I will get the chance to finish it now that I have, no other choice but to stay home with the whole incident going on. But yeah, I'm hoping to finish up with like scripts that I never got to do, scripts that I said that I was going to do. Like I promised that I was going to do a follow-up of Is Disney's Doug Really That Bad? It's on Disney Plus. I've been watching it. In addition to that, I've been watching a whole bunch of other things on Disney Plus, such as the next the next movie we're going to be talking about in the Roald Dahl retrospective, James and the Giant Peach. Yes, the first of 2 movies that was done by Disney based off of a Roald Dahl book. The first one was James and the Giant Peach, we're going to discuss about in the beginning of May. And then the second one was the BFG, the 2016 BFG, which Aaron and we did discuss about in the very first episode. So you can watch both of them on Disney Plus, or even better yet, if you have Disney Plus, watch James and the Giant Peach, and then when the podcast comes out, then let us know about what your thoughts are on the movie. Especially, I think that Aaron and I need a break with all the crappy and mediocre adaptations that we had to go through over the past few months. Like, I don't think we'll ever wash away the bad taste of our mouth with 4 Rooms, and Roald Dahl's Little Red Riding Hood was just a little bit too weird for my taste. But I mean, for Aaron, I mean, he was able to point out why it was the way it was, which is fair. Let's see. I'm disappointed that the Aladdin TV show is not on Disney Plus, but all the other Aladdins are. I mean, like the TV shows are a bit difficult. I mean, I think that, to be honest, most of the Disney Channel TV shows are not even in there. Like, Recess has just recently been up there, from what I remember. I think in one of the Disney Pluses. I'll have to look it up. And so is Disney's Doug. They're going to bring back the Proud Family, but that's because they're also going to be they're going to have new episodes of the Proud Family. I think it's a reboot or a continuation called, the Proud Family, Prouder. I don't fully know the title, but I do know about it. And I'm really excited about it. But the Aladdin TV show is canon. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it's a distributions issue. Like maybe they need to get the rights for it. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, like both of the Goofy movies are up there, but when my friends and Toonrific Tariq, when we were doing the podcast on both a Goofy movie and extremely Goofy movie, Goof Troop wasn't even in there. I think it is now in some places, but not in all the places, from what I remember. I don't know. Maybe they announced that it was going to be up there, but yeah, they have both of the Goofy movies, but Goof Troop is not in there. So I don't know. I mean, they don't have most of them. I don't think Darkwing Duck is up there. I don't think that Tailspin is up there. Jungle Cubs, Dave the Barbarian. Oh, it is now. Okay. I do know that some places they don't have it. So yeah, I mean, when we were doing the podcast of a Goofy movie, an extremely Goofy movie, Goof Troop wasn't up there, but now they put it up there. It's like, oh wow, now people are talking about Goofy because of the Goofy movie, an extremely Goofy movie. Let's put Goof Troop up there. It's like genius. So I take it that maybe it will be up there eventually. I mean, they are slowly building up their repertoire. Oh, and Darkwing Duck and Tailspin is. Okay. I do know that, again, a few places don't have those. So, I mean, like, for example, Aaron, when he was going to watch James and the Giant Peach, they didn't have it on Disney Plus in Europe. But we in America, we have it. So, yeah, I mean, like, there are some things that some countries have on their Disney Plus that we don't, and vice versa. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll work on it eventually. Let me see. Are you going to do a review on the Wild Thornberries? Eventually. I got so much stuff on my plate, it's not even funny. Yeah. But Jungle Cubs isn't. Yeah, it's not there yet. I know that. Neither is... I know some of the others are not up there. I mean, I'm sure they'll get there eventually. Anyway, so that's it for things I can't explain for chapter 1. Again, if you want to get yourself a copy, I will leave links in the description below so you can get a physical copy, a digital copy, or an audio copy. Also, you can hear me read the book that I did, chapter 1 that I did last Sunday. And I will be doing the same thing again this Sunday, where I will read chapter 2. And then probably this Thursday, this coming Thursday, next Thursday. Next Thursday, I'll do another live stream where I will be doing something similar, where I will be discussing about chapter 2 of Things I Can't Explain. I think I may even have a guest with me. Who knows? So, yeah, I think that should be it. I will definitely keep you guys posted on what I'm going to be doing. I do know for sure that Aaron and I are going to be working on some other stuff. Recently, we just did the Dream Machine episode of Trolls World Tour. So if you want to go listen to that, then go check it out on the channel. Last week, camera. Come on. Okay. Last week we did our premiere of In Search of the Crystal Skull, where we talked about the 2020 Sonic the Hedgehog movie. That is, it is that podcast, for those who didn't tune into that one, it is a podcast where Aaron and I are going to be discussing about movies that were ranked 60 to 78 or 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, and we're going to talk about the good and bad aspects about it. We may be coming up with some new ones maybe this May. We'll see what happens. And as mentioned earlier, I am going to be reworking my stuff that I wasn't able to finish because of everything that's been going on in my life, school, having to do stuff online. But yeah, I definitely want to do the video follow-up of Disney's Doug. Now that every single episode is up, I need to see fully if it's really that bad. And then there's also the stuff on Avatar The Last Airbender that I wasn't able to do. I actually have the Avatar The Last Airbender pilot. I listened to the commentary by Mike and Brian. I need to put a script together for that one. I was supposed to do more for Avatar's 15th anniversary, but I never got to do it. But I will. Then there's Look Back on Good Burger, which I was supposed to complete for all that month. I need to get into it. So there's that. Oh, and there's part 3 of the pros and cons of the Jungle movie. I was supposed to talk about the aftermath. But you know what? It's a good thing I waited. Because you know why? Netflix has announced that they're going to be releasing more stuff from Nickelodeon, such as Avatar The Last Airbender. There we go. Going back into my... Anyway, yeah, it's going to be released on May 15th. So... finally, I get to update this properly as opposed to waiting like every 2 weeks, because last year when I was writing the script with Arun, there was an update every single moment. It's like, there's a new person who's going to be president. Oh, there's a new person who's going to be in charge of the animation division. Oh, there's going to be some new stuff with Viacom involving with like Netflix. Oh, there's this. Oh, there's that. So I wanted to write a definitive list as opposed to like, oh, I missed out on this because it came out 1 week after I posted the video. So yeah, it just took much longer than anticipated. And there's plenty of other things I want to do. I still have not done my Suburgatory video. I have the videos on my computer. I have all the episodes and I watched it already. I just haven't had the time to write a script. There's so much to do. All right. Oh, and there we go. Yeah. 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 Anyway, so thank you so much for joining in on the book club, everybody. I'm going to post up chapter 2 this coming Sunday. And we got some other stuff coming for Old School Lane. So again, thank you for joining, and I hope to see you guys. Let's see. I was hoping to see you guys next Thursday, and hopefully I'll have a guest with me talking about chapter 2. So thank you, everybody. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.